Hi, I'm Nick Rains from Leica Camera Australia. I've just got back from a shoot in New Guinea, just literally last night, and this is being recorded just a couple of days before release. What I want to share with you now is the new Leica M EV1. What's different about it, what makes it so special, and why have I enjoyed using it so much over the last couple of weeks. Okay, so where does the M EV1 fit into the Leica range? Well, we've got film Leica M style cameras with the rangefinder. We've got digital Leica M cameras with a rangefinder. And now we've got M cameras digital with an electronic viewfinder. So there's three distinct pathways in the M range. So this camera absolutely belongs in that repertoire of camera design. So there's something for everybody. Couple of things that really distinguish it. First of all, obviously, there's no rangefinder. That's the whole point of the camera. We have the same viewfinder as in the Leica Q3 and Q3-43, which is beautiful, 5.76 megapixel viewfinder, beautifully smooth, very responsive, lovely bit of kit. So when you look through the viewfinder on the back, it looks just the same as looking through a Leica Q. You've got the diopter adjustment, and for somebody who wears glasses, this is a big deal because whilst I still maintain that a rangefinder is still fastest to focus in the hands of an experienced user, there is a learning curve, let's be honest about it, but still the fastest way of working. But when you start getting a little bit older and maybe your eyes aren't quite as good and you need reading glasses, I simply do not need these glasses to operate this camera. If I want to review a picture, normally I'd have to do it on the back of the camera, put my glasses on. But now I can look in the viewfinder and see the image review after I've shot it. I can see all the photo information. I've got a histogram live in my screen. It's just fantastic, okay? It makes a massive, massive difference. And of course, I can adjust the diopter on the back to match my eyesight. So from a usability point of view, it's a massive leap forward. Something else to bear in mind about manual focus as opposed to autofocus. So let's say you were using M lenses on a SL3 or you were using a Q3 in manual focus, it's all the same. By using manual focus, when you choose the shot that you're going to take, you've probably decided where your focus point needs to be, and then you'll focus to that point. With an autofocus camera, the camera can't start deciding on where to focus until you've brought the camera up to your eye, so that's a little bit later on. It also isn't telepathic. It doesn't know where you want to photograph. So if you've got a single person in the middle of the frame, no problem. It'll nail that eye 100 times out of 100, okay? But if you've got 3 or 4 people who are moving, or there's all stuff going on, autofocus systems are very quick to focus on what the camera thinks you want to focus on, but that might not be what you want to focus on. So there are many circumstances where autofocus systems can actually be a bit of a drawback, to be honest. I very frequently use manual focus in fast-moving situations. And to my way of thinking, having an electronic viewfinder and manual focus is possibly the best of both worlds. And of course, being an M, you've got interchangeable lenses. So think of it like a Q3 with interchangeable lenses if you were using manual focus. You've got so many different ways of operating, it's fantastic. Something else which is very, very cool on this camera is that it's got the same focusing aids as other cameras. You can magnify the viewfinder and you can turn focus peaking on and off, but in a very, very elegant way. If you look at the side of the camera to the left of the lens here, you'll see that there's the same style of lever that used to change the framing lines on the older M cameras. Now it's a custom function button, limited functions, but what it does is you can set it to, for instance, in my case, if I push the lever towards the lens barrel, it does the magnification in the viewfinder, and if I push it away, it turns on and off the focus peaking. So toggle magnification on, toggle magnification off, other direction, toggle focus peaking on, toggle focus peaking off. Brilliant. It's amazingly elegant how that works, and if you get your hands on one in the store, that's the way to operate it. So you can operate it with your eye to the viewfinder rather, and I find it better working like that than the auto focus magnification that you can set the camera to. The M11D, the M11, not the M11D, sorry, the M11P, the M11 monochrome, all of the normal M's with will do that. and you'll see the results on the back of the screen, okay, or in the Visor Flex 2. But I find that active focus to then focus critically and then tap the shutter button to come back to full view quite a bit clunkier than simply actively toggling it on and off. Now, of course, you could allocate the magnification button to a custom button, which is fine too, but it's built in here and it's in just the right place, and I find it just brilliant. So when I'm focusing, I'll frame up, quick focus, critical tweak, unfocus, unmagnify, I should say, and then ready to shoot. And very, very quick. It's not as quick as a rangefinder, as again in experienced hands, but it's a lot quicker than I ever was personally on a rangefinder camera. I find this just so much easier to use. So very, very happy with it. Of course, the rest of the camera is like the other M11 digital cameras, 60 megapixel sensor, backside illuminated, very good at high ISO, all of those things. That's kind of a given. It's the operation of the camera that I'm really enjoying. Anyway, let's have a look at some images. I'll talk you through some of the images I've just come back with from New Guinea, and some I shot before that out in Western Queensland at an outback campdraft event. Let's have a look at those. Okay, so I took the camera out to a campdraft event near Bollen in Western Queensland, and this was the first time I've used the camera, so it was a bit of a learning experience. I tried to treat it very much like a rangefinder camera, and it turns out that you're best off to treat it more like an SL3 or a Q3 in manual focus than you are as a rangefinder. I found that using the red focus peaking worked beautifully, and in this particular picture I was able to pre-focus where I thought this cow would be coming to. So I feel very connected to that red focus point in the viewfinder when the focus peaking is turned on, and you can see it move quite quickly. And in fact, I was able to almost pull focus with this one. But to be honest, I probably only got maybe a quarter of the pictures exactly focused where I wanted them to be. If I'd shot this at f8, it would have been a lot easier, but this is shot at 1.4, and I really wanted a good position of the cow and a good position of the horse, and I wanted the cow's eye sharp. So I was really asking an awful lot of my ability to focus manually, but I got this frame, which I really quite enjoy. Then I went on to some portraits, and this is where the camera really shines, because you can take your time here. Shooting vertically with a rangefinder, as you probably know, is a lot harder than you might think, because it's an awkward position. With the electronic viewfinder, not so much, and it's no problem at all just to flick your thumb on that lever to the left of the lens to magnify and get the focus exactly where you want it to be. In this case, on the rim of her glasses, which would mean in the same plane of focus will be her top lip and her teeth. So using f1.4 again, I found this a very pleasing portrait with a nice out of focus background. Bear in mind, of course, that the newer Leica M lenses allow you to focus much closer than you could before, down to 0.4 from 0.7 meters. And the viewfinder, of course, doesn't have that parallax problem that you get with the rangefinder, because you are seeing through the lens precisely. So it's much easier to frame something that's much closer than in the past. So that's a big benefit if you are looking at doing little detail pictures. Then I found myself in the backyards of the rodeo, and I found this one quite pleasing in that last light of the day. This is where your f1.4 limited depth of field starts to come into play, because you could have one person sharp and then everybody else just drifting out of focus, so your eye is drawn to the sharpest part of the picture. Sort of classic Leica look, classic Leica type shot. But this was an interesting one. I know it's just a bunch of bulls in the paddock waiting for the bull riding, but there's a certain Victorian feel to this which I really like, and I've converted it to black and white to exacerbate that feeling. Again, shooting at 1.4, relatively easy shot because you can take the time to magnify, focus critically on the eye of the bull, and then shoot at f1.4. And I do like the limited depth of field, even though the subject is quite a long way away. So it has that kind of old-fashioned look about it. So that was Bollen. And then we went to New Guinea, and let me just bring up some of those pictures. I will just filter it for MEV1 with stars. So I'll just go through a couple of them. Again, this is where that limited depth of field comes into play. If you shot this at 5.6 or 8 or something to make things easy for yourself, you just wouldn't have that fall off at the back. And because it's such a mess, it's such a confusing background, the guy in the photograph just simply wouldn't have stood out. So this is where that three-dimensionality comes in. And he wasn't moving very quickly. He was just standing, he's just changing his position in the canoe there, really. So I could take my time to critically focus. If you don't need to focus quickly, then don't. Take your time, make sure it's completely sharp. And if I zoom in on this one, you'll see that it's really nice and crisp. That's exactly what we want. Then I did this portrait of this young lady here, and I did set this one up in the sense that I placed her where the light was best, and she had nice overhead. It was an overcast day, and she had a nice pool of light coming through the forest canopy, making that lovely shape on her face, giving her that lovely profile and showing you the features of her face. Again, shooting at 1.4. If I come in on this one, you'll see that it's beautifully sharp on her eye, and I took the time to focus critically. I also take more than one frame because whilst I'm pretty sure I've got it, might as well take a second one just in case in that split second between removing the magnification and going back to full frame, she's moved slightly or I've moved slightly or something. So take a couple, make sure you cover yourself, particularly when you've got somebody who is prepared to spend some time with you. I also converted to black and white, and I find this a more interesting image. I do like the black and white look. There's so much color going on in this picture that it's kind of distracting, and I just like the textures, and this really, for me, draws your eye to her face far more than the rather bright colors on the rest of her outfit. Then we went to another part of the village where they were putting on a ceremony for us. This is Tufi in New Guinea, and this is the one I particularly like. Again, shooting at 1.4, you've got that three-dimensional look because you've got the background really nicely out of focus. And this was where I was able to fix the focus because there was a procession going on here. There was like a snake of people moving forwards, and every so often one person would be where this gentleman is here. So the next shot I took would have been of the guy behind him as he moved into position. So I can use my focus peaking, locking in the focus peaking along the gravel here. So there's like my target band, and then as soon as somebody comes into that position, I can shoot the picture knowing that it's going to be sharp. I'm not following them, I'm waiting for them to come into focus. It's not quite the same technique. When you visit this village, you will get challenged by warriors. They come out and challenge you. Are you friend or foe? And it's it's a performance, I accept that, but it can be a bit scary. And the guy who came up to me afterwards, I thought I better get a picture of him because he was quite distinctive. So I got him to lean in towards the camera. And again, that close focusing and the ability not to have any problems with parallax really came into play here. So I'm taking my time. I'm using the magnification here to get right in on his eyes, and then throwing the background out of focus, of course, by again shooting at 1.4. What else have we got? I'll just finish off with this one here because I wanted to do more of a formal portrait where I found an interesting person and I was able to place them in a good spot. This is on the decking of a hut, so out of the sun, with a bright patch of light that was obscured above by the roof, and it has that really nice quality of light which you can often see just by looking at what's going on. So I was able to ask him if he would just sit in one particular place, and then I do like this steady gaze type picture. I'm not so keen on the smiley pictures, and when people are having their photograph taken, there's an inclination for them to smile at you, and that's great, but I quite like this steady gaze. And again, I took my time just to focus very, very carefully on his eyes, and you'll see that has come up quite nicely. This one is taken at 2.8, not f1.4. I had enough separation behind him for plenty of out of focus background, and I wanted a little bit more depth of field just to get a better texture of the skin. So you can of course see how much depth of field you've got because you are looking through the lens at the aperture that you have chosen. On any other lens, you're usually viewing it through a wide open aperture, And whilst you can preview that depth of field with certain toggled controls, or depending on the camera, with the M EV1, you are seeing quite literally the exact picture, because the lens is stopped down mechanically to the aperture you've chosen, and that is reflected in the viewfinder when you look through it. So as you actually move that aperture ring, you can see your depth of field increasing, and if you do use the focus peaking, you can see the focus peaking depth change as well. So you really have full information. Well, as you can see, I've had a great time using this camera. It's been just superb. I also love walking around with such a diminutive camera. I'm very used to working with two SL3s, or one SL3S and one SL3, and they're wonderful cameras. I love them to pieces, but they're kind of bulky, and just having this slung over my shoulder is just delightful. In fact, all of those pictures I've showed you were taken on one lens. This is the new 50mm Summilux, and it partners up with this camera so nicely. So yeah, a very interesting direction for Leica to take. It's a brave move. It wasn't that many years ago that everybody was saying, oh, they'll never put an electronic viewfinder in an M camera, but they've done so for what I think are excellent reasons, and they've implemented it beautifully. It's this little lever on the side, I was not expecting that, and as soon as I got my hands on it, I realized just what an elegant solution it was, and it really helps the shooting experience, not only just functionally but also aesthetically. It's just really nice position for it to be in. So yeah, really nice camera. So I suggest, as usual, that you pop into one of the stores. They should be in stock from the point of release, which is, as I record this, in 2 days' time. I may do a video about the menus, although look, it's an M11, okay? It's everything else about it is pretty much identical. It's also slightly lighter, I must point that out, because there's no rangefinder mechanism. I think it's 80 grams less, and if you pick one up next to an M11P, you will actually see it feels quite a bit lighter, quite surprising. Anyway, that's enough from me. I now have to head off down to Sydney and start with the process of the launch celebrations, and I hope you've enjoyed my little first look at the new Leica M EV1.